Lapse the steering wheel here. Give me the steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on. Whoa.
Your leg, my please. Your leg.
How the f*** is this possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph. Did you hear me? From the radio. Perez to the race. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down the hanging straight.
I am so annoyed.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 894. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do on race weekends.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on.
That's exactly what we do on race weekends. But before doing that, I have to go find a real race car driver.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland.
You know
He's
who it
bad.
is.
He's beautiful. He's crazy. It's
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, you truly are the international. I happen to know like an hour and a half you just landed at Dallas-Fort Worth, and you just landed coming back from Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium.
Yes, I did.
And you got to race around Spa, which is awesome.
I did. I've never driven Spa before, and we were doing the Fun Cup race, but it's on the first practice day some of the drivers weren't there, so I got the duties of breaking in the new engine and all this kind of stuff. And I was just going to do a couple laps, and then they said, "Oh, we've got a new engine." So I was out there for like an hour and a half, just breaking an engine in, and it's like, which is tedious work, but it's a Spa, so not so tedious, right? So it was actually a good way to actually learn the track, actually, because we had to obviously. You raise the revs and do all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it was also a bit chaotic because I'm out there trying to bet a motor in, and there's all these other people. There was 105, 110 cars in this race, and this was practice one. And I'm out there doing this, and then there's guys just out there trying to set their car up for qualifying, and I'm like looking at my mirror, I'm trying to get the hell out of everyone's way. Then through the corners, I can push it a little bit straight, and now I have to back out. But my biggest scare was coming through Eau Rouge, and then someone's coming out behind me, and they're drafting me, and I'm like, I got to lift off in a minute. I can't go over 5,000 RPM. So then I just hoped no one was going to smash in the back of me. But so I got quite a few laps, actually, at varying speeds, obviously, because the duty of breaking an engine is to do it properly so you don't scupper the car. So I had to I couldn't cheat there any. So, I had to bed the motor in. But, I got some good laps around Spa. Got to see it finally. Got to see how it really feels going through Eau Rouge. And I did it flat a couple of times. One time, I went off at Eau Rouge, just cut it just to see what it was like. And another time, I cut it because I had to. So, so it was a bit of a mixture. Once I was able to go higher in the revs and just see what you can actually get away with. But it was great.
Awesome.
It's fantastic just driving around that track. I mean, every corner is interesting and has its challenges, right?
Yeah.
And, So, and Formula One's going to be there soon, too. So,
I know.
But look for traffic. There's a lot of construction going around Spa. And I don't think, judging from how the Belgian people work, it's going to be done in time. So, get there early, folks.
There you go.
Early. Yeah.
There's your insider information. If you're going to Spa in a few weeks, get there early.
Yeah, definitely around the La Source area. That's a nightmare. So, try and come in the other way.
Yeah, good. Oh, that's a top tip, Paul.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you happened to squeeze in your home Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix.
I did in bits and pieces, unfortunately. I had to finish off the race when I got home just now. But because, our race was a 25-hour race, and there wasn't a lot of time on Saturday and Sunday, or I didn't have any cognitive, abilities by the time Sunday evening came around. I actually turned it on in the hotel room, and then after about the third lap, I woke up, and it was the morning. So, there you go. But I caught up. I saw it.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it is it's an iconic place. A terrific track is Silverstone. They had 480,000 fans over the entirety of the weekend, 60,000 of them camping out in the rain. It did not disappoint in that classic British weather. It's raining here where I'm at right now. It's pouring. It's chucking it down.
Is it? Oh.
But you had the race, which started out dry, then it got a little damp, then it got some dry, then it got a little more damp, then it got some dry. I mean, it's just classic British weather.
Even some of my cousins are out there sending pictures of where they were.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, the British Grand Prix, it's been there since the beginning of the modern era, Paul, since 1950. Silverstone, a clear driver's favorite track with fast corners, sweeping corners, a real flow that is just so fun to watch, even on TV. I can only imagine what it's like driving it, but it's a terrific track, a lot of fun to watch. And we were spoiled for choice here this weekend. We had 3 British drivers starting in the front top 3 positions. That hasn't happened in 56 years, which is amazing.
Must have been losing their minds.
Oh my gosh! I mean, they were all of them had peed their pants over this thing. They were just, and especially with Lewis winning, they were just over the top. They were so excited. And we were spoiled for choice. So the interesting thing is, at one point, each of the 3 British drivers on the grid led the race. Yeah. So you're like, all 3. Any one of the British drivers could win, Yeah. And there was that moment during the race. I thought, wait, is an Australian going to go and spoil the whole party? And then I was thinking, wait. Is a Dutchman going to go spoil the whole party? So thankfully for the British fans, that didn't happen. But terrific track. And, and I've said it a million times that nobody does F1 fans quite like the British F1 fans. They're just amazing fans. So it was great to see. And I absolutely enjoyed this race. A great race.
Oh, yeah, it was a great race. Yeah. Had a little roll of the dice in there, a little changeable conditions. So
drama, intrigue.
Drama, intrigue. Yeah, it was a fun race to and fro, and you could literally, but it wasn't hard to follow. Yeah. Right. So it was easy for everyone to kind of see who was doing what, and maybe this is the right move. Oh no, it wasn't. Sorry, Charles. So which made it great, because sometimes they can be so chaotic. It's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah. Unless you're right.
Yeah, that's true.
Down in it,
That's true. Very true. Well, let's jump into it. We'll start off at the very top, which of course means
Get in there, Lewis.
Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes taking P1. George Russell, the DNF. That's brutal, right?
Is he the next Jensen Button? They said, he's never been on the podium. Obviously hasn't been racing that many years, but yeah. I bet he thought that was his moment. Let's hope not.
I bet he did, On pole position, fantastic.
Yeah.
Leading the race in the early stages. It looked all going his way until the rain kind of came and it mixed up everything. Yeah. But, even as a week ago, and I know Sky talked about this, but, a week ago when George won and Lewis is kind of out to lunch a little bit, and they asked Toto, and he said, we'll win a race with Lewis this year. And everybody's like, guffaw. Snicker, and a week later they win with Lewis Hamilton. So Toto's like the Delphic Oracle over there. It was incredible.
Yeah. Well, he's puppet master of the whole thing.
He is. He's controlling it all. Mm-hmm. He said they'd win a race with Lewis. They did. That didn't take very long. He won his 9th British Grand Prix, breaking the record of the most wins at a single race by any driver. That was 8 for Lewis, British Grand Prix, and I think 8, what was it, Spa for Schumacher?
Sounds about right?
Yeah, right.
If there's one track that was going to be Schumacher, that would be it.
That'd be it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was incredible. His 9th win, a great win. And it's been, 945-ish days or 56 races since Lewis had a win.
Yeah, I can paint my wall now.
Yeah.
Little hash marks.
Right. You're tracking all this. And it's amazing because, what was that, 56 races? And, it's got to be tough. He had a lot of emotion coming out, which is understandable. And, you got to think about that, Paul. I would imagine, their doubt starts to creep in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm racing a bunch of early 20-something drivers. I'm going to be 40 soon. Do I still have the chops to race at that level? You get a lot of those doubts coming in, and then, just a flood of emotions when you win at your home Grand Prix, one you are so dominant at. It was just a fantastic win for him.
Yeah. But if there's someone who's not going to doubt themselves, even in a lowly thing, I think it's Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, true.
He can be down about certain things, but I'm not sure he doubts his skill level.
Yeah. Right.
As much as maybe someone maybe new coming in that then hits a little trough. I think Lewis knows what he's got. He knows he's got to bring his A game every time for sure, and maybe he didn't have to a few years ago when he had a superior car, but I think he's always ready for it if the everything aligns right, and they certainly did this weekend, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The team called the race perfectly, gave Lewis a very competitive car with slightly more downforce than I think what George was running, helped out certainly in the rain. And while he just patiently waited for that race to come to him, he was there, got passed by Lando. It's all right. Everything's fine. Just wait for that race to come to him. Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. And look, on that final stint, they brought him in. They had a fresh set of soft left, right? So they put the softs on. That wasn't the preferred tire, if truth be known. And so he had to go out, Paul. You can think, well, he put on soft, had a lot of grip level, went out and won the race. I don't think it was that easy. I think this is where Lewis's tire management's racecraft comes in. I think he managed those softs so they didn't degrade so much that he couldn't hold on in those final laps if Lando was after him or Max. And in this case, it was Max just finishing, a second off. But, I think it was a great driver, a perfect driver.
No, it was great. It was interesting to see how when it got more slippery, when they were still on the slicks, that the McLarens just kind of came. Obviously, it shows they've got a bit more downforce that kind of helped them there. So you would think, actually, at the end, Lewis might have been in more trouble than, say, Lando, right? Running a little less downforce than the McLarens, but it just didn't happen. He used all his skills there, and Lando, for whatever reason, that the McLaren on those softs. As soon as it dried up, the softs are just a bad deal, right? The way that track is, the amount of load it takes as soon as it's dry, can just destroy the tire. That's why maybe, I know Max didn't have an option, of a medium, but that was a better option than trying to go for a soft, right? So So I think he did manage the tire better than Lando, obviously car corrected. But it was an interesting scenario, the back and forth in the different conditions in which car was actually doing well. And because it wasn't just like Lewis fell back, it was Lewis and Russell fell back, and then both McLarens came back forward to the lead. So it kind of tells you where those cars' strengths are as well. Right.
There's just a part of me, I was watching that is in the final laps, and then Lando had the degradation, fell back. Max got around him. Max started eating away that time on those hards. Yeah. But there's a part of me thinking, man, this is just Lewis. He's in his element, right? It's the British Grand Prix. I just thought there's no way he's going to let a Dutchman come and win this race. There's just no way. No. And even if Max got there, I think Lewis's car would have been 30 foot wide,
Yeah, he wouldn't be pulling over as easy as Lando was making it. This race either, for sure.
There was just no way. Just that fighting spirit in there. And, it was good. A release valve of emotions. He still got it. Certainly, it just kind of suggests if Ferrari can give him a competitive car, he's there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ferrari are happy with what they're seeing from him, for sure.
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
Maybe not from what their car's doing, but anyway. That's another story.
Right. That is another story. We'll get to that story. George, in my mind, would have factored. Would he have won? I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe not. But certainly a podium, I think, was there. But he had a water system issue, engine overheating, and they boxed for a DNF. It's a real shame. Despite that, you have to take your hat off to Mercedes, who fought back, overtaking Ferrari, challenging McLaren and Red Bull from competitive wins here. It's two wins in a row, right? And two different tracks. So it's really impressive. Yes, George inherited the Austrian Grand Prix, but it just kudos to the team. As much as I'm happy for Lewis winning it, I'm also elated for all the men and women at Mercedes working their fingers to the bone trying to get that car competitive, and they're doing a great job.
They are doing a great job. I mean, it's so hard to make big gains, and they definitely made one. It's just made the championship just wide open and super spicy right now.
Yeah.
So it's great. I'm just happy they're throwing another car in the mix. Any 4 cars can win a race now. I mean, with last year it seemed dire, right? But this season just turned it on its head, which is awesome.
Yeah, the great thing is now we have 3, possibly 4 teams that could win a race. We've had 6 different winners. And the great thing is we're going to change all the regulations again.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen. It seems to always happen.
It does. It does. The longer the regulations are stable, then the closer the racing.
Yeah, I don't like the new regulations, but that's also another story for another day.
It is another story. Let's talk about Red Bull. Sergio Perez, P17, Max Verstappen, P2. I am with Max on this one. I kind of thought, despite passing Lando early on, he may finish somewhere 4th, 5th, 6th-ish is kind of what it was looking like. Well off the podium anyway. But the team had other ideas, though. They called the perfect strategy for him. They boxed for inters, and then they had the fresh set of hards at the end. And those hards really did seem to light up his Red Bull. I mean, he was putting in monster laps, taking chunks of time out of Lando and Lewis at the end. In a very, very impressive run for Max, if I'm honest, who looked like he was on his back foot for quite a bit of the weekend, but on those hards, man, he stormed to the front. Finished, 1.4 seconds behind Lewis. A couple more laps, it'd have been, a battle. But, he may have spoiled that party had he had a couple more laps. But the first 2/3 of the race just looked difficult for him. And with less fuel weight, hard, fresh compounds on, cool temperatures, Max's car just seemed to light up. It was a good race for him.
Yeah, no, it was a good race for him. I mean, they didn't have the car to win. They could have maybe lucked themselves or strategized themselves into a win, but they got the most out of the car. The calls were correct. It was probably the 3rd best car on the track, counting 2 Mercedes and 2 McLarens ahead of him for sure. So ultimately 5th place was probably where it should have been. But Max is Max, right? He squeezes a little bit of extra. The team squeezed a little extra with strategy calls and got the job done. Yeah, the call on hards was probably a good call. It allowed him to push as hard as he could, right? Yeah. And I mean, the ultimate pace of the softs was probably quite a bit more than the hards, but both Norris and Lewis knew they couldn't just push those softs because they were going to be gone way earlier. Right. So they couldn't get the most out of their softs. Max could push as hard as he could in the hards, and that's what kind of brought everyone together there at the end. Yeah,
exactly. Sergio had another torrid weekend. Poor qualifying. Strategy calls were off. The strategy calls seemed aimed at just, at that point, harvesting data for Max's strategy, if I'm honest, leaving him down in P17. Red Bull have a major issue here in Perez, and it's no wonder they're testing Liam Lawson and even rumors of discussion with Dan Ricciardo as the pressure mounts on the Mexican driver. I read a headline, I haven't read the article today, that said that it was quoting Red Bull saying that the current form of Perez is unsustainable and may execute a clause in the contract. So I don't know. It's not looking good. If that's, like I said, I haven't read the article. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but that's what the headline said. But
I mean, their mistake was jumping on the contract with him too soon, I think.
Yeah.
And it's tough to say because Sergio's a really good driver.
He's a really very good driver.
And I think, some of it may have to be just being that number 2 mentality, and it's a difficult place to be, right? You grow up wanting to be a world champion. You find out you're not really world champion material. You're a good driver, but you're not one of the great drivers. And I think that's just mentally kind of destroyed him a little bit. I mean, he perhaps could go to another team and it could liven him back up again, or go race sports cars. I mean, I'm sure most sports car teams would be happy to have a Perez talent there. He goes to a different place. Breathe in some new air. But I think the Red Bull cycle and being partner to Max, and then just their unrelenting push on the Red Bull side. That they don't suffer bad, mediocre performances very lightly, do they? And they're always ready to play a driver they're maybe not in favor against all the drivers they've got in their lineup. Yeah, and I think it had a negative effect on Perez. It's not making him push and be better. It's actually kind of destroying him a little bit.
Yeah, go the other way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe they do take a Ricciardo and then they put Lawson in the other car, in the junior team, and because they've got nothing to lose at this point. Sergio's just kind of, even Ricciardo is a better option at this point to finish the season off, right? Maybe not long term, obviously, but I think right now they know Ricciardo's good enough and could be a better support to Matt.
You got to try something, right?
Yeah, you got to. The other teams are too close. They're too close or ahead right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to try something.
Yeah.
Let's see. Down to where we're McLaren.
Oh, Jesus.
Poor Lando. Lando Norris in P3, Oscar Piastri in P4. Ultimately, this is just my opinion, but ultimately this comes down to strategy and tire selection. Mm-hmm. And if the drivers had no role in determining that, then this race was lost by the team. Period, in my mind. Yeah. If the drivers had a role in that, then it was lost by the team and the driver.
Yeah.
Lando was passed early on, but then took the lead over Hamilton, and the team left him out a lap too long, in my opinion, and fitted soft compounds for the final stint when the medium on the McLaren was a better tire by far, as Oscar proved. And I think they, if the commentary team knew that prior to Lando boxing, surely the team knew that.
Yeah.
So not sure why they decided to go with soft, because Oscar said in the cool down room, my softs degged way like 10 laps before Lewis's, right? And I thought that was an odd. Lando said that, yeah. Sorry, Lando told Lewis. Lewis was saying his softs were degging or degrading,
right? And
Lando said, "Yeah, mine were 10 laps for you."
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Was this Lando's choice to go on the soft? If so, my thinking there would be that the team need to take full control of their strategy and leave it up to Lando to execute the strategy that the team designed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're out in the wet and you've got slicks and it's so wet that he can't do anything, you're going to take a driver's feedback, of course. But in this case, I don't know. It's an odd thing, Paul, to have. They had to know the mediums were faster. Oscar was already out on the mediums, setting fast lap times. So it was odd that they'd fit the softs.
Yeah, it was weird. Oscar had the mediums on before they even pitted. Yeah. Okay, couldn't have been very.
Not very. It was like a lap.
There wasn't a lot of data to. Yeah. And it was interesting, just the verbiage on the radio. No, do we cover Lewis or do we cover Verstappen? And it's like, why are you covering anyone? You're just trying to win the damn race. And they were the only team in the enviable position of having the option of hards or mediums, or softs, obviously. And mediums just doesn't. Softs just didn't make sense to me. I mean, because as mentioned before, the amount of load on a tire at Silverstone, the fast turns and the quick change of direction, you can destroy a softer tire very easily. Yeah. So having the medium on hand, as Oscar said on the radio, no, mediums is the call.
Yeah, Oscar said it. Yeah.
Yeah. They should have listened to him, really. But yeah, the feed you want feedback from a driver. Could you make softs last 20 laps? Can you make them a little bit of feedback? But the ultimate strategy call's got to be coming from the pit wall, because they see more things than the driver is. Obviously, they don't feel what the tire's doing or how hard a driver's pushing sometimes or not. So the driver can give them that feedback on the car and how the tire works and that kind of stuff. But the ultimate call of what they see, how they see the race completing has to be the pit wall, and they have to have the confidence to do that. But I think what happens is they get to this point where, I'm not saying they worship their driver, but they give them way too much say in those things because they held them as a fantastic driver, which is great. A fantastic driver is a fantastic driver. Doesn't mean they're a fantastic strategist all the time, right?
Yeah, you're starting to look a little bit Ferrari-ish.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah. It's okay with you, Charles. We'd like to do this. No, okay, we won't do it then. Okay.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
I do want to mention this because I think this is a little unfair. Some people online were saying, Lewis managed his tires, his softs perfectly, and Lando went out and chewed his up hard. Look, Lewis is great at managing tires, no doubt about it. His tire management is terrific. But Lando's degraded quicker, and it's not an apples to apples comparison here, folks.
Right.
Totally different car, totally different chassis, total different performance on tires and load on tires. So the McLaren on those softs in the dry may have just chewed through those tires with their downforce loads and all that kind of stuff, than what Lewis's did. So it's not an apples to apples to comparison on that. I by no means do I think Lando came out on softs and just drove, 10 tenths like an idiot and chewed his tires up in 5 laps. I don't think that's what Lando did.
No. I mean every car has a different performance, a different way it works on the tire. Certainly in sports car racing, it's very apparent to us, which car is going to chew up its tires better, which car switches the tires on earlier, what car is easy on its tires. So as much as sport car racing, the same thing applies to Formula One, where even though we're talking about splits of tenths of a second, hundredths of a second sometimes between these two different chassis, they're coming about that pace from so many different avenues.
Yeah, exactly. You could argue that the slow stop and the undercut from Lewis was going to be too tough to overcome. I don't know. Had they placed the mediums, I think it was in the cards, as Oscar's performance on mediums suggested.
Right.
Oscar was also, in my opinion, left out a lap too late. I understand that they're not big fans of stacking, but Mercedes showed that was the right choice ultimately. It was the right decision, and it cost Oscar a lot of time, put him back. Now, once he got on the mediums, he did plow his way back forward, setting in fantastic laps. He was driving a heck of a race, and I think a lot of super elated for Lewis, and of course that should be the headline, but I think Oscar had a fabulous race in what he was coming back from. Yeah,
there was like a 2-lap window for changing the tires, and McLaren didn't get Oscar in either one of those. I mean, you stack, he had a gap. He could have backed off about 2 seconds, took the pressure off the team a little bit. Yeah. But ultimately he lost. It was obvious that he was going to lose way too much time on that extra lap than he ever would stacking. I don't know. I guess their worry is double jeopardy, if that's the right phrase. But, if Lando has a problem with his pit stop, then Oscar does too.
Yeah, right.
That's what they don't like to do it. But sometimes you got to go win a race and you got to push those limits, and that was one of those times.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. Let's see. Let's talk about Ferrari, shall we?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Oh, boy. Charles Leclerc, P14, Carlos Sainz in P5. Charles struggled again with a miserable race, poor qualifying. I'm not sure what's going on with Ferrari and Charles. I'm really not. But the wrong call for the enters. Did he make that call? The team make that call? Why'd they make that call? And then the 3-stopper, that was never going to work. That was never going to pay any dividends. And this was just exacerbated by Carlos, who they seemed to make the right strategy call for. And despite that, he lingered around the top 5 all day. And it's a shame because Charles had a good start. He came all the way up to 8th place. So I'm not sure. If they'd have just mirrored Carlos's strategy with Charles, he'd have finished in the points, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not quite sure what happened there. I don't know if that was just Charles making the call on the race, or if the team, why they had those different strategies. Because Carlos's strategy, barring a lack of performance in the car, Carlos's strategy was correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more to do with the desperation of the car not being very quick compared to its competitors and trying to do an alternate strategy to try and get him somewhere because he was going to go nowhere.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because that first rain, all the teams are rating on their drivers saying, okay, this first brief shower is going to come down. We got to survive it with the softs, and then we'll go inters because it's going to be heavier right after that. So most of the teams, they stayed out on softs. It got slippery. It was tough. But as soon as that first light rain came in, Charles came in for inters while Carlos stayed out. And it was just, it's odd. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. Am I on still?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I just think it's desperation. As I said, it's just they're just trying to do something different and hope something comes off. It was a real long odds deal to go out in the inters that early.
Yeah,
they did it to Perez too, and I think you're right that they kind of put Perez out there as sacrificial lamb because they're figuring he's not doing anything else for him. Right. It could have if it had just kept raining, but everyone. The obvious strategy was Sainz because that's basically what everyone else did, right? Everyone else is looking at the same weather. They're just hoping that there's something different some alternate weather that's coming through that no one sees coming, and that's their only chance to jump and get back in the mix.
It's that same optimism that Ferrari had with Charles last week, where they said, "Yeah, you're on target for points." They finished P11. It's like, woo, woo. We're super optimistic.
In there. They're scared right now. They're running scared from you.
We just feel like you're going to be in the points. We just feel like boxing for inters now is really going to pay dividends.
Yeah,
it didn't. Let's see. Haas F1, Nico Hülkenberg, P6, Kevin Magnussen, P12. Another terrific P6 for Nico. And that's a massive endorsement in the direction that Komatsu's taken this team versus Gunther. I mean, look at the difference. And it's just they're doing things right. They're scoring points. The car seems competitive in the hands of Nico and a good strategy. Mm-hmm. They've scored 20 points in the last couple of races, 27 in total for the year, and they're battling RB in the championship. And it's a great race for Nico. 2 P6s, and that's not by attrition. He qualified there.
Right. He sure did. So here's what Red Bull should do, unless they can't get Albon, because I think they should try and buy Albon's contract out and get him and see. I would then offer Hülkenberg the number 2 seat at Red Bull and buy him out of those. The last 2 years he's going to spend developing a new car at Audi. Right. I mean, he's qualifying ahead of Perez,
of the Ferrari.
And the Ferraris. I mean, and he's holding the car there. They figured out how to make the tires last. I mean, his level right now is something Red Bull should be watering at the mouth over.
I know.
And it's great that Hülkenberg's still going to be in Formula One, but you give Hülkenberg a chance to be on a podium, which he's never been on, which is ridiculous.
I know, it's crazy.
Right? And he's probably not going to get on a podium even driving for Audi.
I agree.
I would absolutely just go buy him out of that contract. Say you got 2 years, go score some points, win a couple of races, and do it. I would love to see Hülkenberg get that choice. Yeah,
I would too. This is great. Kevin boxed a lap too early, and that put him in the clutches of Albon, and Alex stayed out, so he was able to build that gap to Kevin. Kevin said that his softs just grained immediately, and he struggled for grip and lost a lot of territory and ended up in P12. So given the challenges that he had and stopping a little late, et cetera, coming home P12, not all that bad. But it was irrespective. It was a great weekend for Haas. That's 2 P6s for Hülkenberg.
Yeah. Definitely. And unfortunately, Kevin's getting a bit put in the shadows right now, which is unfortunate for him if he wants to continue his Formula One career. But he's really not doing a bad job. It's just Hülkenberg's doing the exemplary job, right?
A better job, for sure.
I think Magnussen's should have been closer to them if everything had been equal. But Hülkenberg's kind of separating himself by his qualifying, quite honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll, P7, Fernando Alonso, P8. Fernando had a touch with Alex Albon at the start, managed to continue, but he reckoned that they waited too long to box for the enters, and but he still managed to bring it home in the points in the 8th. Good race for him. I think the touch with Alex there was just a reaction to Nico coming back on, and they just got bunched up. But
Yeah, it was.
He had to check up, and Alex tapped him, and it was a racing thing. But
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Lance also brought it home in P7 for points, and maybe that shouldn't be a big surprise. These were changeable conditions, and this seems to be one of the arrows in Lance's quiver on his race graph. I just think Lance is good at changing conditions. He typically has done pretty well in those conditions. So a dual point finish with Lance coming home P7 is a good way to finish. It's their home race. They needed to get back, and based on what we've seen in the last, 2 or 3 races, it's a good result for Aston.
Yeah, they need a little shot in the arm there, especially with both cars, right?
Yeah.
And Lance does, obviously, definitely gets outshadowed most of the time. But yeah, he does do well in changeable condition. Trying to figure out what makes a driver good and bad in those situations, because you wouldn't actually think Lance would be that great at it.
I know.
I
know. Yeah.
I could see him doing very well when the car's good and everything like that. He's fully competent, but just something about it, and it could be just his driving style. If you look at the driving style when those drivers are driving, when it's wet and you're on the slicks, I mean, the inputs have to be so slow and precise, and you don't ever want to get over that limit where you put too much input and the tire starts to slide. And so maybe it's just his general technique, and it just adheres itself. Maybe he's got a very smooth style that maybe ultimately doesn't get everything done in a dry, but in those changeable conditions, it can be nice and kind to the car and don't overwork the tire and get them beyond that point of grip.
Yeah, you may just have a light touch, to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So good on Aston Martin. Good result for them. Williams, another good result from them. Yeah, Alex Albon. Oh, Williams. Where'd I gotta go? Yeah, so you got Williams, Alex Albon P9, Logan Sargent P11. Alex, as I mentioned, tapped by Alonso at the start. Nobody's fault. Thought he had a puncture, but it was actually okay. Had a little damage to his wing. He marched on to finish in the points. Much like Mercedes and Red Bull, Williams nailed their strategy with Alex. They left him out. He gained that gap over the Haas. I just think they read the tea leaves perfectly for Williams, and then leave it to Alex, and he executed, which he often does. And Alex, he was up, then he drifted back, but kind of like Lewis, he let the race come to him. He was patient, worked within the margins, stayed on slicks, worked within the margins with the grip levels he had, made it work, and just waited for that race to come to him and took advantage. So I think it was a great result for Alex in a home race.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Driver definitely has to execute those strategies. When we won at the Glen a couple of weeks ago, it's absolutely that, where it's sketchy conditions and you tell the driver, okay, we'd rather stay on slicks. Okay, we'll do it. And it's how the driver performs in those conditions, very important, because you can't always be pushing and making ground up. You're just surviving out there without making mistakes. Right. And Alex, obviously got pushed back quite a bit. He qualified well, but ended up losing all that in the first few turns. And then to make his way back up to ninth was very impressive. Not unsurprising, I think he's a very good driver. And this should have been a good track for the Williams anyway. And the team did a great job executing the strategy too.
They did. Logan, good race for him, finishing P11 by overtaking Magnussen. And you might argue that the team could have boxed Logan a lap earlier, maybe. That would have helped him out a little bit than they did. But given, the race in front of him, I think overcoming Yuki for a point was a tall order for him at that point. But I think passing the Haas's, get up there P11, it's a good result for Logan. Whether I don't know if that was a career-saving race.
I don't think anything's going to save his career right now. Certainly not at that team.
But that's a better way to go out of F1, finishing thereabouts.
It is. I mean, if this is his last year in F1, make the most of it. And it was a good drive. There wasn't a lot of attrition. So it wasn't like a P11 because 8 cars dropped out. He beat a lot of cars today. So I think that was great for him.
I don't even know if that'll get him to the end of the season, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know either. They've really got to move on with their future plan because obviously, they have a big plan. We just don't know what it is yet.
Right. Yeah. Oh, boy. Let's see. RB, Daniel Ricciardo, P13, Yuki Tsunoda, P10. Dan said it was a race which he struggled. He said that I guess maybe he said he struggled more than he should have, really. And the team just weren't, the car and everything just wasn't competitive enough. He said we really shouldn't have struggled as much as we did. He also said that the track didn't really suit the car and that the team hasn't had the result from their upgrades compared to other teams, meaning that the other teams' upgrades have just been better, basically. I'm paraphrasing there. Dan didn't say that, I did, but that's kind of what he said. So after a couple race weekends, finishing ahead of Yuki, he finishes down P13 off the pace. Probably not a lot to discuss with Dan, but that's kind of how it went.
Yeah.
For Yuki, again, probably not a lot to discuss here either, other than he managed to bring it home for a point. And he did finish ahead of Dan, which is a change from the last few races where Dan's been leading. Yuki.
Dominating.
Yeah, dominating. But the bigger issue is for RB in total. They've just got 3 points in the last 2 races compared to Haas's 20. Right?
Yeah.
So they're battling Haas in that championship for millions of dollars. It's a big deal. And the team have to do something. They've got to get those upgrades to work, find some new upgrades, do something to take that fight back to Haas.
Yeah, absolutely. If your aero isn't right, then Silverstone's going to show it off pretty well. We said before, it wasn't a disaster. They got the upgrades. They didn't quite figure them out. The next race, which was Austria, they were fairly good.
Yep.
Seemed like they got a hand on it. But it's always going to be a progress thing. And obviously Silverstone, very different track. So I don't think all is lost. But yeah, this just wasn't their shining moment. But to get a point, we don't know at the end of the season. That point may be very important. I know we kind of joked about Yuki, with their P10 board and the whole team acting like they just won the world championship thing. But, they could be an important point. You never know.
I know. 1 point has determined many championships.
It sure has, yeah.
Let's see. Speaking of disaster, this is becoming a disastrous season for Sauber. Sauber or whatever whatever you want to call it. Valtteri Bottas in P15, Zhou Guanyu P18. It's starting to look desperate to me over there, Paul, at Sauber. No points on the year. And we're talking about Yuki got a point. Sauber has none. No points for this team. Dead last. No points.
And no points means no money.
No money. Right. Major issue here. Joe even qualified P14. They weren't able to capitalize on that to nip into the points. The rain threw a bit of a curveball when they stayed on slicks. They couldn't hold any of the positions then. Starting the race on softs, that didn't work. They degraded quickly. They boxed early. The strategy wasn't on. I'm not sure what the team need to focus on, but they surely can find some points. If you have, you have to wonder what the mission at this point is. If it's just trundle around, I don't really care if you score any points for the rest of the season. What are we all doing here? I mean, the people that work for this team, you got to put yourself in their shoes. Hard to get motivated when you haven't scored any points and the upgrades don't do anything,
Yeah.
You start to question your reason for being in this position,
Right, yeah. It is tough. It's kind of like the Haas team from last year, year before, what are we doing here? We're just going backwards and finishing last. There's not a lot to, in the team rah-rah meetings, not a lot to rah-rah about, is there? I mean, the car's not great. The strategies don't seem to be brilliant ever, which is unusual because they used to actually be pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Sauber could usually pull something out, and I don't know where the team personnel are compared to back
Ruth
then.
Buscom's gone. There you go.
Yeah, she's gone, right? But that used to be kind of feather in their cap. They used to be able to kind of figure out how to get the best out of what they have. But right now they're lost, and they're really not much to speak of from week after week after week.
I'll just chalk it up losing Fred Vasseur.
Yeah.
There you go. You never know. Let's see. Finally, Alpine, Pierre Gasly at DNS, Esteban Ocon P16. If it was bad for Sauber, it was even worse for Alpine. Pierre Gasly went on his formation lap and said, "What the hell?" And his gearbox is something wrong with his gearbox. He goes in the pit, did not say, miserable. So he didn't even race. Esteban struggled for pace, saying, "This gets a little spicy here, folks." I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said the team took the wrong decisions all weekend with the wrong car setup, the wrong strategy, and wrong tire choices. Ouch. Does that sound like a driver on his way out?
And the wrong engine in the back. Yeah.
And the wrong engine in the back.
Yeah. On a power circuit. Yeah. Not the best. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be a bit disgruntled, isn't he? Old Ocon, but.
Yeah. It's a brutal weekend because just when they seem to be, the last couple of races, they were right there. And you and I are talking about, look, they're not winning races, but at least they seem to be kind of progressing
moving in the right
little.
direction. Right? Yeah. This wasn't one of those races, obviously.
And then yeah. What are you going to say?
It's a different category.
Just a different category, Paul. All right, look out some awards. First award of this podcast is Move of the Race.
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
Yes, Paul, I hear you. Who do you have Move of the Race?
I'm going to give it to Piastri for his outside pass. It's a continuation of his Austria moves. Seems to be.
Yes.
He seems to be pretty confident in those outside moves, and the people he's putting outside moves on are no chumps. I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, Paul.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
There you go.
Mr. Stewart. Yes.
Yeah, he saw the gap. No, that's a good shout. He had a great race. He really did. Overshadowed for obvious reasons, but it was a great race.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Mercedes strategy and Lewis executing it for the undercut and then managing the softs and bringing it home. I just think it was it was just a great storybook finish. Fantastic for the team. The team desperately needed it. As much as I talk about Lewis and how doubt can creep in and those kind of things, or you can start questioning life. And as much to say, I'm sure the men and women in Mercedes thinking the same thing. My gosh, we went from 8 years of total domination to nothing, and running midfield. So, and, obviously Toto very frustrated. So great testament to that team buckling down. They got poached for some real key individuals out of that team left. They have to overcome those gaps, that vacuum of knowledge base that's gone. I mean, it's just, there ain't nothing easy about what Mercedes just did this weekend.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of poaching going on, isn't there?
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Ferrari just
Cardile just left to go to Aston Martin from Ferrari. Yeah, the chassis guy. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? Does that mean someone else is going to Ferrari?
Yeah. Ted Kravitz said Adrian Newey was in the paddock taking copious notes and making drawings of all the teams. And he said,
really?
If he was retiring, why would you be making drawings of other teams' aero? Yes.
Yeah.
You go get him, Adrian.
Yeah,
let's see. Next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live. Hey, what happened?
What happened, Paul?
Well,
Donkey.
I'm giving it to McLaren. Sorry, Zach, but I think they made a few errors out here that I think they have the best car right now. And you just look at him, even when Norris was chasing Lewis, I mean, he could cut the corner so much better and chasing Verstappen. They actually have the best car, and they kind of fumbled their way back to one podium spot and a fourth. I think it's on them. I do.
Oh, Jesus.
I agree, Lando. I totally agree. That's my favorite Lando soundbite.
It is.
And he's got a million great sound bites, but I just like that one. I think it says it all. Let's see, Donkey for me. I'm going to go. I was torn going to Sergio or Charles and Ferrari.
Yeah.
Since I'm a Ferrari fan, I'm going to pick on my team. I'm going to go Ferrari and Charles.
Okay.
It's just, come on. You're better than this.
Come on, little trooper.
You won Monaco. What do you think that car runs on? Memories? Come on. Let's go. All right. Finally, the last words. Drive of the race.
Get down. Get down.
Get in there, Lewis.
All right, Paul. Who do you got? Drive of the race.
I'm giving it to my buddy Oscar again.
Nice.
Honestly, I thought he had a great. I mean, as I said, McLaren kind of forced him back there out of the hunt, but his driving in those opening laps was great, formidable, I would say. And then his pace on the mediums at the end, if they'd have pitted him at the right time, I think he would have been able to fight. Maybe could have fought Lewis harder than Norris did, actually.
I think so.
I think he had a great race. So
giving it to the Aussie.
Get off now.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's good. I went. This may be formulaic, maybe obvious.
Get in there, Lewis.
I gave it to Lewis.
Okay.
I think it was a great race from him. Great execution. As a race he needed.
It was. It was a nice big emotion there at the end. That was nice.
Yeah. Always a big emotion.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. So I gave it to Lewis. Hey, we do have some mailbag. I got a mailbag for you, Paul. It's a good question.
Mail.
John and Sam asked this. They asked, question for you both is I feel like the answers would be interesting. If money was no object, what U.S. track would you want to upgrade to a grade 1 track and have an F1 race? For me, I would replace Miami with the Glen. Thanks for your pod. We'll look for every week's podcast. Well, thanks. And though she's quite partial to Grace's weeks, yes, I understand. We're all partial to Grace's weeks. I agree. Yes.
Jeez, I need to get cats or something.
I know. What do we have to buy? A cat tree and some cats for people to like us?
Do I need to start watching basketball? What is this?
Yeah, exactly. Watch more MotoGP, which I watched, by the way.
Yeah.
So what track for you?
Road America. Hands down.
Me too. Elkhart.
Yeah, it's a
Elkhart,
track where you wouldn't have to change the layout.
Yep.
The layout worked perfectly for Formula One.
Yeah.
And obviously, Formula One takes a lot. They probably need more gravel traps. Obviously
Safety
you need a
measures,
pit complex.
Big pit.
I mean, the Glen is a great call too. Obviously, F1 raced there for a long time. So they definitely have a history there. You'd probably have to change the Glen a bit more than you would Road America, but that would be fun to see also, for sure. Yeah,
I thought you and I'd both say Elkhart, but I think when people ask me what's your favorite track in the U.S., Road America is it. For me. I just
there's great tracks, Laguna, you got Sonoma, you got Road Atlanta, but they would have to be so changed so much to suit a Formula One car. You wouldn't even recognize the track anymore. So
Sebring's fun. I mean, there's just
Sebring. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Formula One car over the bumps of Sebring? Goodness gracious,
it'd be crazy.
Yeah, the layout would be good, but they'd have to resurface the whole of Sebring, and then it's not Sebring anymore, right?
Right. So great question, John Sam. Loved it. I thought we'd be of like minds on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. Let us know what you think of the British Grand Prix. You can do so by going to theparkformay.com. Share your opinion in the comment section of this podcast when I post it. Let us know what you think. A huge thank you to our patron supporters. And we could not and would not do this without you. I know we're losing a few of you, and I get it, tough times and all that, but if anyone ever wanted to support the podcast, it'd be great. You can do that. Go into our website. Go to the bottom. It says support us, and you can support us for as little as $1 a month. So huge thank you to our supporters and Patreon supporters, because you make this all possible. So thank you for doing that. And a little programming note. I'm going to try to con Paul in, because Grace is out next week at conference, and I actually go to Belgium next week. This Saturday I go to Belgium. So I'm going to try to see if I'm not going to commit him here on this podcast. I'm going to try to sweet talk Paul into recording a podcast for next week. And so anyway, but don't anyone panic if Paul gives me the middles and I don't get a podcast recorded. It's Paul. You never know.
You never know.
You got to approach him always approach Paul with kid gloves. You got to be careful, you know.
Not from behind either.
He's not a person to be trifled with. He's from Essex, damn it. He's Kent. So anyway, all right. But thanks, Paul, for coming on, reviewing this. It's been a great run. And until the next show. Yeah, you need to go to bed, Tiger. Until the next show, we will see you. Thank you so much. This is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. I don't feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.